Have you ever considered how intelligent you might be compared to others? How your capacity for logical thinking, reasoning, and memory compares to that of public figures, be they celebrities like Adam Sandler, Billie Eilish, or Kendrick Lamar, or influential leaders and billionaires like Bill Gates or Elon Musk? For several decades, the notion of IQ became synonymous with intelligence. IQ is supposedly a measurement of one's cognitive ability, assessed through a series of pattern recognition, memory, and logical reasoning tests related to your age. In recent history, however, the accuracy of these tests have been questioned, with the skeptics arguing that the results of the test rely too heavily on outside factors surrounding a person's mental health, access to education, and even motivation, arguing that it doesn't accurately display the range of intelligences a person can have. Despite this, there are still people that adamantly believe that IQ is a reasonable assessment of one's intelligence, with appeals to IQ being a common tactic in online debate. So the question is, do you think IQ is a useful measurement? Let's start at the beginning. The IQ test is based on psychologist Charles Spearman's general intelligence theory, which measures what he called the general factor, or G factor for short. The G factor is supposedly an accessible measurement of a person's mental skill on a spatial, numerical, verbal, and mechanical level. His idea was that these mental skills applied to everything a person does, and thus an assessment of them would accurately measure a person's intelligence. He theorized that while some people excelled in one area compared to others, proficiency in one area correlated with doing well in others as well. Later psychologists that built on this theory, such as Raymond Cattell, have suggested that general intelligence is affected by two factors: our genetics and inheritance, and our environment. IQ tests are built on measuring the cognitive skills Spearman laid out, especially the earlier ones that were developed in the US for First World War recruitment and later the eugenics movement. Modern IQ tests, such as the ones you can pay to take online, are also influenced by the combined theories of psychologists Raymond Cattell, John B. Carroll, and John L. Horn, who all built on the theory that general intelligence had broad subdivisions that could be measured individually, but together assess a person's overall intelligence. The combination of their individual theories is called the Cattell-Horn-Carroll theory. So with all that in mind, how exactly do modern IQ tests work? It's pretty simple, actually. You're given a number of puzzles, problems, and time-related challenges that assess your ability to recognize and memorize patterns and make both calculation and inference-based solutions. Your score on the test is calculated by how accurately and quickly you complete each challenge, and then compared to the scores of those in the same age group as you to determine your final IQ score. The IQ score of the average person tends to fall in the range of numbers between 85 and 115, with psychologists considering those with an IQ of above 130 to be geniuses and those below 70 to be intellectually disabled. This numerical score system may seem perfectly objective at a first glance. However, there are a few problems that have been identified with this method. First and foremost being that the general intelligence theory is by no means the only theory on human intelligence, and it is not even the only one widely accepted among psychologists.
In 1938, psychologist Louis L. Thurston was one of the first to challenge the G-factor theory with his primary mental abilities theory, which proposed more than just one intelligence, directly challenging the general intelligence theory. Thurston proposed 7 main intelligences: associative memory, numerical ability, perceptual speed, reasoning, spatial visualization, verbal comprehension, and word fluency. Associative memory and reasoning being the two that the IQ test focuses on, which leaves other 5 intelligences without being tested in this model. If we use Thurston's theories, the IQ test is not only inaccurate, it also completely ignores more than half of the intelligences proposed, making it flawed. Another model to consider is the Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences theory, which also proposes that intelligence is not a general ability, but rather different abilities that different individuals possess in different quantities, suggesting that there is no general way of learning a subject, since people learn differently. Some psychologists have also suggested that even if we were to judge the IQ test solely on its own merits, there will still be factors in the testing process that could still produce unreliable results, such as the anxiety level of the person taking the test, be it internally or affected by outside factors, or the accuracy of the speed test without reliable equipment. These inaccuracies are concerning, but to make matters worse, it seems that IQ scores, regardless of how accurately they represent a person's intelligence, are still leveraged by individuals at the expense of others. Most troublingly, IQ tests have historically been actively used to marginalize and dehumanize groups of people. The original IQ test was created in 1904 by French psychologist Alfred Binet, and it was used to try to quantify at what rate do French students learn, so teachers can modify their teaching styles accordingly. But even Binet himself warned that this test should not be treated as a measure of absolute intelligence. As he says, this scale does not permit the measure of intelligence because intellectual abilities are not superposable, explicitly saying that it's not a measure of intelligence as a whole. Despite his warning, in the early 1900s, the US used IQ testing as a tool that would support discrimination and eugenics. Psychologists such as Henry H. Goddard argued that intelligence was a hereditary trait and used IQ testing to claim that certain racial and ethnic groups were biologically inferior. Goddard administered these tests to newly arrived immigrants who often did not speak English and had little proper education, and used this evidence to support his flawed take. With this flawed evidence, future exclusionary immigration policies were justified and derogatory stereotypes were reinforced. In a more modern context, despite the growing concern about the accuracy of IQ scores, the grading and comparing through these scores is so prominent in many online political discourses, and appeals to these scores have been often used to mislead people. With how relatively easy it is to get a test, verifying the score of an individual claims to have a certain score is basically impossible. An example of an individual exploiting this is Yoon Hoon Kim, a man who claims to have an IQ score of 276, a number well beyond the possibility on a standard test. Yet, it still maintains some plausible deniability due to how prestigious IQ is held in certain spaces and how hard it is to fact check it. He uses his likely false IQ score to grift to right-learning individuals in online spaces by saying things they might agree with, thus gaining a huge internet following and ranking some revenue. Might as well, you know.
So overall, there is a lot to consider regarding the validity of IQ. As we have gone over, much of the purported science is shrouded in doubt, and much of its application in practice has led to little good in the field of psychology. Yet, despite all this, many still hold on to the idea that, while it may not be the most accurate assessment of a person's intelligence it was once considered to be, IQ scores could perhaps be, to an extent, meaningful still. I mean, the tests are still measuring something after all. A person is still solving those problems and puzzles with a certain degree of accuracy and speed. So surely the score is reflecting some facet of their intelligence. Maybe an IQ score simply indicates how strong an individual is in one of Thurstone's categories, or how likely it is that they will pursue science, or how suited they are to a career that involves problem solving. These are questions that psychologists still don't have a full consensus on. With all that said, however, with everything you now know about measuring IQ, both how it's done and the potential shortcomings, how do you feel about it? Do you think it's an accurate means of comparing your intelligence to that of your friends and family, or that of celebrities, or that of the rest of the world? Do you think there are any accurate means of doing so? Human intelligence is a tricky thing, and with all the variety of people in this world, it might be difficult to find a numerical scale that accurately displays it. Okay.